Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026 with Fertile Talks. So this episode of Fertile Talks is sponsored by Montgomery Fertility Center. It's a center where we specialize in personalizing your fertility care. We're also going to be announcing that my book, Dr. Famuyiwa, The Quest for Fertility, is coming out in March. So if you haven't seen any of my posts, go to my website, send us a message, and we'll be sure to keep you posted on our launch information. So let's get started tonight. Tonight, I want to talk about something that is not always very obvious, and that is what can affect your fertility. Well, some things in fertility are very loud, right? They just show up, such as your blocked fallopian tubes, your severely abnormal sperm counts, or advanced endometriosis. But there are things that are quiet, that just show up very, very quiet. They accumulate over years invisibly. And today's episode is about one of those quietest disruptors of fertility that I see in my practice, and probably one of the most underestimated. And that's simply sleep. 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 Not just how long you sleep, but when you sleep and how well you sleep. Because you could be in bed, but your sleep is fragmented. And whether your biology ever gets the signal, because if you're not sleeping, you never set the signal to your biology that it's safe to repair, to fix, to ovulate, and to sustain a pregnancy. So this episode is for women who think that sleep is only temporarily. I know in the Nigerian culture we have a joke that you finally rest when you die. You literally could die without sleep because your biology really doesn't operate on your willpower or whether or not you're professionally dedicated to your cause. Your body's going to shut down one day. Let me give you an example. I had a nurse who worked double shifts, but in addition to the double shift that ended up around 7 a.m., night shift ended 7 a.m., in the morning she would run errands, she did volunteer work, she would maybe go back to sleep around 3 p.m. or 5 p.m. and then get right back up again to do it around 6, 7 p.m. She was really running on fumes, and she'd done that for years. So when she came to see me, she wasn't just tired, she was just exhausted in a way that sleep deprivation alone does not explain. In addition, she had gained weight, her cycles became irregular, she became foggy, and really disconnected from her body. So, and we tried to accommodate her schedule with the clinic, trying to work with her to say, okay, we'll get you seen as soon as you get off shift and everything. But sometimes your fertility really doesn't run on hospital time, and medication timing was inconsistent. Appointments were difficult to navigate, and her ovulation was unpredictable. So even with the medical knowledge, her body was actually paying the price for this severe chronic circadian disruption. And I would ask her, is this schedule sustainable? Because, oh yes, another thing, she was in school as well. She's trying to complete another degree. And I'm like, where in this, 20-hour daylight span or 21 or 2 is your body going to recover? So we try to work with her to alternate her schedules a little bit, maybe work a few weeks on and a few weeks off. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for her. It wasn't easy for her workplace. And it wasn't easy for her identity as an independent professional, a dependable professional woman. But we slowly changed things to make her fatigue ease a little bit and try to improve her metabolic markers. But the issue is not a medication or something a pill can fix, because chronic sleep deprivation it becomes a systemic problem, right? So one of the things we know is that if you have a chronic sleep deprivation, the reproductive axis going from your brain to your ovary is exquisitely sensitive to that circadian rhythm that it should have, your sleep rhythm. And when you disrupt that sleep, especially on a chronic basis, you're sending a message to your body that it's not safe to reproduce, right? The body's saying, wow, we're in chronic stress state, we shouldn't be getting pregnant at this time. we should, pool our resources to save it for survival. Let's break down what happens. So we know there's a signal going from part of the brain called the hypothalamus that beats off a signal called the GnRH. It's the signal that goes to your pituitary gland that causes the FSH and LH to release. And it has to do so in a pulsatile manner. When you have chronic sleep deprivation, you blunt this pulsatility and you start to disrupt the signal coming from the pituitary gland to your ovary. So yeah, ovulation becomes delayed, becomes irregular, sometimes even absence. And one of the other byproduct is progesterone production falls. So poor sleep reduces the luteal phase progesterone level, and that affects implantation and also affects early pregnancy support. Now, I alluded to this earlier. Your cortisol goes up. Cortisol is your stress hormone. So when your body is in a state of sleep deprivation, your body sees it as in you are in metabolic warfare, people, right? So your chronic night shifts elevates cortisol, and cortisol will compete with your reproductive hormones. And what happens is you start to have insulin resistance, right? So you start to get a metabolic-like pattern when you get that, even without making any dietary changes. So it's not even what you're doing to your diet. It's just your body's way of trying to survive. And all these leads to chronic inflammation, right? So one of the things that happens when you're chronically sleep deprived, there are some molecules, we call them cytokines. The inflammatory types start to spike up. It's like your body is in a low grade fire, right? And it affects everything in your body, your egg quality, your endometrial receptivity, your sperm health, right? Because your body's trying to put out a bonfire here. And one of the things that it can also do is it can mimic PCO, right? Because you get weight gain, disruption of your circadian rhythm, you get abnormal ovulation because now your pulsatility is off, you get a metabolic syndrome, your insulin resistance goes up. But it's not classic PCO. It's an induced type of PCO, right? So trying to fix it with medication may not work when what you need is time for your body to just repair and regenerate. You just need some sleep. So it's not a failure of discipline, right? It's just your biology is responding exactly as it was designed to do in a state of stress, right? So your fertility does not reward whether or not you're superwoman, superman. It doesn't reward endurance. It rewards whether or not you are in alignment with what you should be doing. So, are you trying to do anything to get your sleep back, right? So avoiding overly long work hours, irregular schedules, chronic stress, maybe from work, that just makes it worse. And we have this mentality that you should just push through the fatigue, right? Just push through. You don't need any rest. You'll rest on the day you die. Well, you may be dying sooner than you plan if you don't give that body some rest. And you won't be able to reproduce as you want. So what you want to do is take a sleep inventory. What are you doing about your sleep? I know that there are so many wearables now that you can do to check if you're getting enough sleep, if you're sleep deprived. You can use them, but be careful because sometimes that can result in its own anxiety. What you want to do is maybe journal. Is my sleep consistent? Is it sufficient? Am I getting regular light exposure in the morning and darkness at night? Are you rotating your shifts, or are you stuck in a chronic, circadian misalignment shift work type? I tell you, one of my best friends was a nurse in labor and delivery, and she told me over the years that she just, got to a point where she refused to work at night anymore. Her body just wasn't taking it. And I don't blame her. It's very rough, people. And if you have to work nights, get some rest. Don't get off your shift at 7 a.m. and now you want to go volunteer, in your organization, in your church, you want to run errands, have other people do it for you and go get some sleep. You can't function on 2-3 hours of sleep. So what is the lesson of the day? Restoration matters, right? Restoration, regular rest, timing matters. And the bravest thing you can do is not trying to push through exhaustion, but trying to get some much needed rest. Now, I do in my book, The Quest for Fertility, I go a little bit more into the pathophysiology of what happens in more detail. So you'll just have to read the book when it comes out to find out more details. In the meantime, this is yours truly, Dr. Yemi Famuyiwa, and I'm happy to be back for 2026.